could he have been that cruel, that evil to those women? It makes me sick to my stomach.
Good morning. Another body has been found in Duncraig.
It's just so surprising. He'd be the last person you'd think to do something like this.
I mean, mutilating a young woman like that is just pure evil.
Hey, how are you? My name is Kenneth Shaw, and Roger Martinez was my half-brother. In our childhood, Roger was more like a parental figure than my father or our mother ever was. My dad worked FIFO out on the oil rig up in Carnarvon. He wasn't there most of the time, and Roger's father left his mother before Roger was even born. Our mother, well, she wasn't really fit to parent us. She was more into drinking and ciggies and being our mother. Roger was fairly protective while we were young. Being 6 years older than me kind of put him into, that role. While at school, when kids would pick on me, he'd have no problem beating up the younger kids. I guess that's where his problem kind of started to show. Most of the stuff he did to the kids, he learned from our mum when she'd, I was shocked when I heard the news. It's just so surprising.
Roger really didn't show any signs that he had trouble at home. He was just like your average quiet kid, which is probably why I started to talk to him. Roger and I started to date around the end of 1991, at the end of year 11. I was new to the school and I really didn't have any friends at our new school. He wasn't the type of person to lash out or anything. He didn't really like people, he'd rather just keep to himself. After we graduated, Roger took up carpentry. He really liked how he could work by himself. It was really calming for him. A little after he got hired into the cabinetry business, he proposed and we got married. None of his family showed up to the wedding apart from his brother, which he never really recovered from. I was expecting 3 months after the wedding and Roger was really stressed out about the news of our little girl. But I never would have expected him to do what he did.
Rebecca Cranfield was a 19-year-old at the time. She had just completed a trip around Europe with friends and was about to settle down and start a degree in animal welfare. On the 27th of July, 1998, she was walking home from the pub after her welcome home party that night at the Glengarry Tavern. When Rebecca walked through an alleyway, she came face to face with Roger.
On the 4th of April 1999, Sarah Martinez was born. Roger responded positively to her birth, and the way he acted, I thought we were going to have a perfect little family.
Roger murdered Rebecca on the spot with a brick to the skull. He mutilated her face brutally, you could barely tell it was her. Roger dragged her body from the alleyway in which he killed her and dumped her corpse in a bush.
This was the first of Roger's many murders. The police at this time didn't know anything about who would do such a thing. At first, we suspected Rebecca's ex-boyfriend, but this didn't turn up any leads. We had a killer in Duncraig.
Usually people kill because of some deeper meaning, but not Roger. Roger, he just wasn't normal. Roger had bursts of rage in which he killed. He was especially violent, enjoyed mutilating the people he murdered.
My father, well, I didn't ever really know him. To me, he's a sort of curse I have to endure. Not here in the flesh, but a tarnished legacy I have to live with. Where I was from, it was normal to have kids without dads or mums or whatever. But I was always treated differently, feared and alienated. And I never really knew why for the longest time. From the moment everyone learned what kind of man my father really was, my identity was stripped from me. No longer was I Sarah, the funny artsy kid with twin pigtails. No. That was my father's blood. A monster.
The night Tiffany and Roger brought Sarah home from the hospital, Roger went out again, and this time, he had the intent of killing someone. He had brought his tools from work and, he was just ready to kill. Abby Gregson was a 17-year-old student who was just starting her final year of high school. She had been walking to a bus stop just down the street from her friend's place when Roger grabbed her. He stabbed her in the throat with a box cutter before brutally beating and stabbing her to the brink of death until he drove a chisel into her skull, killing her instantaneously. He skinned her face with a carpentry plane to disfigure her furthermore.
At this stage, we were starting to see signs within Roger that he enjoyed killing people and enjoyed watching them suffer. Abby's autopsy showed us that she died due to the chisel in her skull, not the stab wounds. This demonstrated to us how sick in the head Roger was. He killed her for pleasure, no other motive.
Elizabeth was one of the kindest people you'd ever meet. She loved everyone. She was just one of those people who are good to be around.
The thought of murder lingered on Roger's mind. He had killed twice and gone unpunished. He really craved to kill again. He would go for frequent walks at night, tracing out possible murder locations and stalking potential victims.
Elizabeth Stewart was an 18-year-old who was just coming back from a party when she came face to face with Roger Martinez. Roger was violent like always, and he began stabbing her with a rusty screwdriver. Elizabeth let out screams which alerted the neighbour who was taking out his bins at the time.
Our neighbour was taking out his bins when Elizabeth started screaming. He went to go see what was happening, just when he saw Roger jamming a screwdriver into Elizabeth's eyes. Roger fled as soon as Brad shouted out to him.
Brad called an ambulance as soon as he realised what had happened to Elizabeth. The ambulance got there and rushed Elizabeth to the hospital, but Roger had killed her. Brad Smith worked with police to produce a police sketch of Roger, and by this stage he was also the main suspect of the other two murders. To us at the time, it looked like we had a serial killer on our hands. We began to send out more units around this time, which was very helpful in catching Roger. On the 24th of August, one night, the searchers came across someone. He was a man who was covered in blood. He had blood all over him from head to toe. It was a really graphic sight, but they had found Roger Martinez.
He was covered in blood, head to toe, because he had just taken his fourth victim. Roger had just sawn off the head of Alice Wall.
Alice had a rough upbringing and was addicted to numerous drugs before the age of 14. She was living on the streets since her parents had just kicked her out of the house for doing crack in her bathroom. This was perfect for Roger. The officers on the scene took Roger into custody, but Roger only spent a night in the local jail before his brother bailed him out in the morning, which probably was a terrible idea to let happen. Roger was scheduled to arrive in court for the trial on the 10th of September, but he never showed up. Police went to Roger's house, and that's where they found him.
He had shot himself in the head with his own firearm a day prior. The stress of the trial and the sadness that came over him due to Tiffany and his daughter leaving him was just too much for Roger to handle, so he ended it all.
I reported on the news of Roger's death on September 11th to mass outcry from the public who believed he didn't receive sufficient punishment, but the death of Roger was soon overshadowed due to later events that same day.
How could he have been that cruel, that evil to those women, and then just end his own life just like that? Makes me sick to my stomach.
It's just so surprising. He'd be the last person you'd think to do something like this.
I was happy when I found out Roger was dead. I mean, mutilating those young women like that is just pure evil.